Hey, hey, hey. It's your boy, AG the Dad today. Man, it's shit talking with Sensible Chery today. Today is a very exciting day because, you know what? You're going to have to stay tuned and watch the whole show if you want to find out what's really going on. But today we have a great show. We have a little bit of snippets of things we want to talk about, show you, announcements, preludes, whatever you want to call it. But let's just jump right on in and let's get here with Sensible Chery. What's going on?
Hello, hello.
Hey, hey, hey. Exciting day.
It is. It's good. I'm going to give some updates and see how the show is going to play out. So for some of you that may have seen the last couple of episodes, I was discussing my grandson and that he had been born with drugs in his system and pretty much abandoned. And so I've been the only one involved. Didn't want to take him in because I wanted to be grandma. I didn't want to be mom. So he's currently in community resource, which is another name for foster family here in Oregon. And what was happening is I was having trouble seeing him in the hospital. And so now he's in the community resource home. And the situation with that is that the visitations that I have are currently once a week. So I've only seen him twice since he's been out of the hospital, which is a little frustrating because we had a person that I knew that previously had been foster family and their license expired in March. And so trying to get an emergency certification for them. That way I would have the ability to kind of see them a little bit more flexible than what's going on now. But unfortunately, that's not happening as of yet. And I have a letter into DHS to see exactly what is the holdup as to why, when they are supposed to go to friends and family or family and friends first, why they kind of went away from that in this dynamic. And so he hasn't been able to really have a proper introduction, even though he's little. He was born on the 27th of August, so he's not that old yet. But his uncle, my son, and then he's got a couple of half siblings that haven't been able to meet him yet because of the schedule for the visitations. But working on that, and so I'll be giving updates in regards to how that's going as well. But it's kind of frustrating with the system and how, to keep to keep families together, to keep biological family members involved. And you would think that, when you have members that are willing to help and be a resource in any capacity possible, that the state would want to utilize that. But it seems like they're putting barriers in place, and that's making no sense to me.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think that I mean, not every situation will there be a relative that wants to step up and take responsibility for another person. Because at the end of the day, it's not necessary. I mean, yes, they're relatives, but doesn't necessarily mean that they're your responsibility. Legally, at the age of 18, after you're 18, you're your own responsibility. So I get it. Um, I think that it goes back to the separation of church and state. It's the fact that it's starting to become so intertwined that people who are on the church side want to show compassion, and I respect that, because I agree we should have compassion for all humanity. But at the same time, it's gotten to a point where it's gotten so far out of hand because there's so much. I can't remember who said it, but I remember hearing someplace that someone saying there is more evil in this world than there is good, and that's why um, the battle between good and evil. Um, but good is so much stronger than evil because good can overcome all evil. But sometimes people are so far evil that they don't want to be good anymore because they've been so hurt. And sometimes you just need to keep chiseling at them, because eventually good will shine through. That's why they say there is light at the end of the tunnel. But in the cases of what we got going on here, the people that are in their workload is so
Hmm.
full that they just put everybody in the same boat, and it's a template. Just follow this procedure. That's it. That's why we have the money allocated, and let them fight to come get them, which it shouldn't
Right.
be like that. I mean, where have we lost the right to have uh I mean, is it control? You know, because there's a very fine line between uh who has custodial rights to
Hmm.
the child. I mean, is it automatically default to the state? How is that even
Right.
legal?
Well, right. And he became a ward of the state um, when I chose not to take him, and the people that have his half siblings, they weren't going to take him. Well, and he would have been a ward of the state anyway, regardless, because it's my daughter's son. She's
Yeah, but
31
see,
years old,
that's where
and
it shouldn't be. It should be right away. Let's say you chose to say, you know what, I don't want this my grandchild in the foster system. So, along with all the other responsibilities that I already have now, I will take this one on. That should almost be the end of it. I can see there being a social worker maybe assigned, and that
well,
would be it.
yeah, no. See, and that's the thing. So here's the deal. At least here, I don't know how other states work, but their first priority is to reunify with a parent. And so the dynamic that we're in, and I have such an issue with that right now, is that the reason that my daughter doesn't have her first two children was because of drugs. And repeat actions, it's a good indicator of what the future is going to be, and nothing has changed. They're a lot older now, and they've been adopted, and now we have a third child born under similar and almost worst dynamic in regards to the usage of her addiction. And it's just like, okay, so we're going to try really hard to reunify this child with her. And I have a significant problem with that because that is not in his best
Right.
interest at this
Right.
time. They keep, and that's the, I've been hearing people that keep, the more that I dig into this, they're like, in Oregon, it's just like, it's not the best interest of the child. It is reunification and whatever they have to legally do to get there. And that can be at the detriment of the child. I mean, how does it make sense to put a innocent child into an environment where there's drugs actively being used, even visitations and stuff like that? They're like, oh, well, if they've been using, that's all the child ever knows, and so it's okay for them to visit their children even if they're separated temporarily while using. And it's just like, why do you, because that's all the child has ever known? How does that make any sense? The
Yeah.
child shouldn't have to know that. And so
Right.
why are you not requiring them to be clean in order to see their children, to be at a certain level, through, whatever they're working through? And this 30-day stabilization, like that's what their first 30 days of stabilization. And then we're going to, really work on reunifying. I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm like, at this point, my own daughter, I'll say, needs 3 years of stabilization. She needs to be able to be self-sufficient before she
Hmm.
even thinks about being able to take care of a child. And at that point, we're getting to the point where it should be on the child's terms, not the parents' terms, when they are not making good decisions and good judgment calls. And so it's a very broken system. And
You know,
I'm not,
here's the issue with that, right? Um, if you, I mean, I get it should be in the best interest of the child. It always should be that. The problem I see is, what if the person that's making the decision for the best interest of the child has a different agenda? Because, I mean, not to go way left, but we all know that, um, I'm not going to say, let's just say people sometimes have their own agendas. And when they're given that kind of power, they can dictate how or what route a child will go, whether he'll be successful in life or given an opportunity to be successful or not given any opportunities to be successful. So giving that power to an individual rather than, it's just damned if we do, damned if we don't.
well,
It's education at the end of the day. I think for me is really key, especially in the, I mean, the fact that there are so many parents out there that are drug users, right?
mhm,
And having babies and whatnot. And we're just incarcerating them instead of treating it like a disease or an illness and treating it. Because I
mhm,
think that um, the fact that the flooding of drugs into, just like right now, we have the fentanyl problem. We have
mhm.
kids dying every single day behind fentanyl. So instead of educating them more, we just put stop fentanyl, it's rampant, say no to drugs. No, no. As hard as as the system is pushing towards gender equality, we should be fixing the things that truly are killing our kids.
Right.
Uh, Being tormented, yes, I get that's messed up, but you're dying at your own hand. And this fentanyl thing, yes, they're dying at their own hand too, but it's lack of education. You have one over here, it's a pill that people can have and it messes them up. And then you have transgender over here, it's an ideology, and it's already been diagnosed as a mental disorder.
Well, and that's up for discussion because they took it, I forget what the medical term is, but they took it out of being a mental disorder, classifying it that way. And so, but I would say, regardless of how you classify it, we need to get into the root of what is causing it. And that is what, people really are not discussing. It's just, there's a
Mhm.
majority of this, there's trauma in the background. There's just normal adapting and wanting attention within your circles, whether it's through family or friends or what have you. There's so many dynamics that nobody is addressing the why. They're looking at the symptom. And so
Mhm.
it's just like, let's get to the root of why someone is even going down that path to ensure that it's something that is a path they're even meant to be on. We get so derailed and sidetracked with all of the, pressures that are going on around us, and influences. There's absolute influences, and children are highly impressionable. And so the idea of taking our children and just letting them run rampant, let them make their own decisions. We are supposed to be the adults. We are supposed to be guiding them. And to say that a child can actually, come to a point where they can choose in kindergarten or first grade or second grade, these elementary years, and say, oh, they know at that age whether, what gender they want to identify as. I'm sorry. No, they don't. There could be, and the idea that maybe there is one in millions, maybe that's a possibility. But the reality of it is there's so many outer influences. And so I guess this would be a good segue to get into our Dr. Phil, not the order I was going to go, but we do have the clip from the Dr. Phil that had aired on the 16th, which was Friday. It's the first part of 2. But this one, I will give you a little bit of a background, because the clip that we're going to show is the clip where I made a comment. But there was a mother whose child was in school, and the school had decided that they were going to call the child by a different gender, different name. School had started maybe roughly September, and then by January, the parent gets a notification, like an email, to have a discussion of some sort with this other name. And so she didn't even think that it was her child that they were discussing. And so all this stuff had been going on behind the scenes, where the school had decided to affirm this child's gender preference. And so they went down this route. And it was being encouraged, and the mother ends up pulling her child out of school. And then, she decides that that's not what she wants to do anymore. Once she was outside of those influences, there was a lot of social media, and then there was just the affirmation from school.
Well,
So we have
let's
this.
show them. Let's show them the preview, and
Yeah,
then we can get off into it. So this is
absolutely.
courtesy of the Dr. Phil show. Shout out to Dr. Phil. Thank you for allowing us to use this little clip. It's about 2 minutes. Here we go.
Educate and inspire and train. What do you want to say?
I feel like I'm hearing a lot of conversation right now about the parents and the parents' feelings rather than about the children. As a child that has been in that position at some point in my life, it is so difficult to take information like this to your parents.
Right.
Your parents are the last people you want to take that information to, because you don't want to disappoint them.
Yes.
And so for me, I think, whilst the parents do need to be involved to a degree, yes. I don't think it needs to be from first contact. We need to relay this to the parents. We need to be giving these children an environment to experience this themselves first before it's taken to the parents.
And encourage them to share it. The ultimate goal is to share it with the parents. Help them do that.
We're not actually locking parents out either. We are providing an opportunity for the child to choose whether they share relevant information or not.
Say who you are.
My name is Chery.
Okay.
I'm an Oregon parent, and my concern with this is I understand that there's a comfort level when it comes to possibly telling your parents. There were things that I didn't want to tell my mother when I was young, so I can understand that. However, I also know in regards to our school districts that teachers are mandatory reporters. And there's a difference between feeling uncomfortable going to your parents versus being harmed going to your parents. And when parents aren't involved and they have that other side, there can be so much that is missed. And so you are comfortable in your skin now, I'm assuming, as are you. But what about somebody who ends up making a change because it's not what's meant for them, and they're just confused? And then they go down a road in these states where You can get medical hormone therapy and puberty blockers at ages when you're not an adult yet. You can't vote. There's age restrictions on voting, driving, buying alcohol, firearms. There's age restrictions on a lot of things. There should be age restrictions on this.
May I add one thing to what Azra said? Azra, you talked about training,
So-
teachers being trained and so forth.
The crazy part about that is that, I mean, I always love having dialogue between both sides. You know, the guy that was getting ready to talk, he was a teacher, and because I watched the segment, and he said that, you know, he's the one who said that, you know, it's a disorder, and that a large portion of, you know, people who are transgender regress. I think maybe I'm saying it wrong. They want to go back. They're like, uh-oh, I messed up. I think
transition.
they're like, uh-oh. And by then it's too late. You've already castrated yourself, or, you know, removed your breasts, and going back, I mean, there is no tomorrow.
Right. And that's the thing, like, you encourage it at such an early age. And it's causing more confusion than anything. And, you know, there's these things where it's like they keep talking about, well, studies show that if you call a child what, you know, how they identify or whatever, that they're less likely to commit suicide, and all these other things. The reality of it is that community has a very high propensity to commit suicide. There's a lot of other things going on. And that's where it's just like, are we truly addressing the root? And there's so many ways we can go down this. You know, I started looking into, you know, the chromosomes and stuff like that. And we have dynamics where you can have, you know, it's XY or XX, and you can have extra chromosomes, and they'll play out in different ways, like Down syndrome or something like that. But I could absolutely see a dynamic where if you have an additional chromosome, that as a male, maybe if you have an extra female chromosome or something like that, depending where it is on your DNA, that it could contribute to you having more feminine qualities. This idea that, you know, we have feminine women, we have or, you know, feminine women, feminine or masculine men. I was definitely more of a tomboy. And this is one of the big concerns that I have. If I grew up in this day and age with what we are doing in the schools with our children, and telling them that, oh, you know, it's not necessarily just a phase. It's not something that you are just experimenting with. It is what you are meant to be. If I was told or encouraged when I was younger, as someone who was very athletic and was very competitive, and wanted to, you know, I dressed more like a boy than I did a girl and all that other kind of stuff. If I were to go down and be like, oh, well, you should have been a boy. You were never meant to be a girl. Look at the way you are. You know, I could have absolutely been encouraged or influenced. And this is where my bias comes in. I think of the what ifs that could have happened. And so when we claim that we're not harming children, how do you know that? How do you know that you're not just taking somebody who is going through a phase in their life when they are trying to fit into this world, and then telling them, oh, sorry, you're making a choice today. This is the choice that you must have been meant for your entire life. So if you were a girl and you have, you know, more masculine tendencies, you should have been a boy. They got it wrong. I'm sorry. God doesn't make mistakes. And this is a whole nother different dynamic. You know, when you talk about separating church and state, if there's only two genders, which there's intersex, where there are a very small minor group of people that do have both, which is very rare. And that's even something like they don't want to have these discussions. They're like, oh no, there's so many more. There's a difference between feeling I can't change the color of my skin. You know, it's to change your sex, there's things that you can do, but it is a choice you are making. And, you know, these people that are like, I can't control who I love. I can't control this. We have way more control than we give ourselves credit for. And yet it's like, and it's one of those things where that's when laws come into play. Like all of a sudden, if there's a law, you learn how most people learn how to control themselves so that they don't have to suffer the consequences of whatever the law or rule is. But we're getting to a point where we are just encouraging people will do whatever you want, but we're supposed to be guiding them. And it's just like, I'm not saying that transgender people don't exist and that there aren't any. I'm just saying that this is something that should not be done in the impressionable years when you're still developing. The frontal, your frontal lobe doesn't even develop until your mid 20s. And the idea of you making a decision to change your anatomy, to go through procedures to an extent where in a lot of these cases they will become irreversible if you continue on without having lived a life. That is harmful.
Okay, hold on. Let me ask you a question. So I know that we go to the point where we want everybody to have rights. So I know that environment encourages what happens in life, right? For our children. So when we allow same-sex individuals to adopt children, do we draw the line there and say, no, if you want to have your lifestyle, that's fine, but we don't want to force that lifestyle on this child who has no he or she doesn't have their own free will at that age. They, like you say, they could be influenced, especially as a baby, all the way up, because if you're immersed in a lifestyle long enough, you will adopt that lifestyle. Kind of like in America, if you live on the West Coast, you don't have that Southern draw. You live in the South, you got that Southern draw. You live in New York, you have that New York, so everywhere you go, you adapt to the environment that you're in. So that's why when where do we draw the line? That's when we were growing up, sex education was basically the birds and the bees, the basics, guy, girl, intercourse. That's it. And that's all it should stay like that. Now, if you want to educate our children and say that these type of individuals exist, it's a very gray area, because these are choices that they're making. These aren't because they have to. I mean, these. It's such a gray
have way
area.
more. No, I agree with you. And that's the thing, like, the whole dynamic of a household of, same-sex couples, I a little too familiar with that, and so I think that you can grow up in a household where you have same-sex couples or what have you, and people can turn out either way. What's important is the influence, like that whole dynamic of who raises a child. I think it's more important for there to be two loving people to raise a child, versus these split homes and all the other things. Would I say the preference would be a man and a woman? That was, I believe that's what the original intent was. How we as humans have decided to make our own choices, that's a whole nother thing. But does that mean that it's that somebody who's in a same-sex relationship isn't capable of raising a child? I disagree with that. I think they are. That comes down to love and kindness and how we're raising people. The other side of this, though, is the influence side. And so and there is that, like, there's that dynamic of what you associate with who you hang around, like an indicator for who you are. They talk about, take a look at your 6 closest friends, and so it's a good indicator for who you will be, like millionaires, they're all hanging out together. If you're hanging out and the people all around you are poor all the time, your ability to get out, it's difficult. And so I think that we need to start helping people understand to be able to take a look at who are you, and what is your purpose? And so we grasp onto needing the approval of others, and needing to be accepted. And then you throw trauma into that. That's something that happens because there's a lot more trauma happening in this world. I think trauma's always been there, but it's just there. And so you add that layer into it, and then you're working through that. So we've got to be very careful where that line is. You are absolutely right. It is so gray. Because even like with the dynamic, if I bounce back to my grandson, it shouldn't be easy to lose your child. But at what point are you causing harm to somebody? And who's to say, it's just like for me, if I'm going to raise my son in a Christian household, I have no right to tell somebody and want that to be my right. Somebody who wants to raise their child to be a devil worshiper, who am I to go into that family and say, you can't do that? There's
it's
a
crazy,
level
but
of harm.
the problem with that is we did have that. Do you remember back when we were growing up? We had the Pledge of Allegiance. They took that out because one nation under God, and it meant more geared towards Christianity. So,
which is what
atheists,
this country was founded on,
right?
By
and
the way,
atheists are like, no, God don't exist. So we don't want our children to say that. So that was the beginning of losing rights by overstepping boundaries. Although comes back down to the separation of church and state. It's if you don't do it for this person, you shouldn't do it for this person. So it's the same thing. You go so far as to say, well, people who live an alternative lifestyle, they get these rights, but what about people over here? They don't have the right.
We are starting to, by encouraging that there's equal rights across the board, you're starting to take the rights away from others.
Right.
And that's not right. So this is something where we need to have a bigger discussion. And it seems like there are some things that should be universal truths. And then there are some things where you may do something totally different than I do. And it's okay for us to have separate ways. This all comes down to harm. When what you are doing starts harming others, that's when we are crossing a line. And there's a difference. Let's not go there with the I'm offended line either. Like there's a whole difference between being harmed and being offended. If you take something personal, that too is your choice. If somebody isn't physically harming you, that is your choice to take something that is said to you personal and get all upset about it. And so I'm talking about true harm.
Right, but words can be harmful.
They can. But you have to choose to allow them to harm you. You can call me every name in the book, and it's only up to me to internalize that and accept what someone says.
But if you're in a group of people and somebody calls you something degrading or embarrassing in front of a bunch of people and they all laugh at you, it's the humiliation. So, I mean, I understand and I get it. And that's where we need to address that problem of people who don't know how to act right. But then it also falls back to the fact that we have taken Pootie Tang out of the equation. And for those of you who don't know who Pootie Tang is, he was that guy who could take his belt off and get you in line with before you can flash and blink an eye. And the fact that corporal punishment, I'm not saying that every kid needs his butt whooped, but I am saying that every kid needs guidance and discipline. Okay, because
and consequences and accountability.
Out of respect, the out of control disrespect that our youth are having because we have taken all the rights from parents away. And this is a prime example. at the fact that when transgender children in school decide that they want to come out to the school and not the parents, that the parents are the last to learn about it, and they're the first person that you come after to be responsible for any actions that are harmful to anybody else. We are liable as parents. So the double-edged sword, you can't have it both ways.
It's coming. No, it's coming. There's starting to be lawsuits against school districts where, this stuff is going on behind the scenes and they're not informing parents. Parents have rights. And at what point, the school is overstepping that, this idea of come to school, change your clothes, and you don't have to tell your parents, and you can be this whole different person at school, and then you change before you get out of school. That's deception. What are you encouraging? You are encouraging lying, deceit
against your parents.
Is that what our education is supposed to be doing?
Instead of honesty.
Right. It's just like we need to get back to brass tacks. Reading, writing, arithmetic. These are all things that education was supposed to do. We are failing at that. In Oregon, our state scores are at 40%. We are so low compared to all the other states. And yet take a look at what we've been doing for the last couple of decades with all this focus between, we claim that we want equity and equality and all of this other kind of stuff. And yet it's totally doing the opposite. It's dividing people and it's taking away what the purpose of education is. Before we start working on social issues, we need to start doing what we were meant to educate our children in school. If they are not able to read, they aren't writing, they're doing horrible at math, like get that stuff straight before you start trying to conquer other issues. And we've lost our focus. And so, I get, the idea of being equal and fair and inclusive and all of this other kind of stuff. And we absolutely should, but we should be taking that to how we treat one another. This idea of like even, going on like the whole other thing, like the Menstrual Dignity Act, putting tampons in all of the bathrooms, including boys. How is that helping our students in their education? Well, it's causing division because you took something that was intended to help those that were having a difficult time getting these products, which, by the way, I hate to say this, but at what point did it become the school's responsibility to provide feminine hygiene products? And that's the whole thing. Like we put on the responsibility on our schools to do so much more than educate. We are trying to put the responsibility of what should be happening in the home to the school. And in some instances, yes, that's needed. But in some instances, you are absolutely overreaching. And maybe instead of like keep layering on all of these things, free lunches and like I said, there's definitely a time and a place for this. But we take it and we just blanket cover, like there, a certain percentage of students in our state that are eligible for free lunch. The entire school gets it. It's just like we go from one extreme to the next because we don't want anybody to feel a certain way. Well, you know what? I hate to tell you this. Life sucks sometimes. And we have to learn how to navigate life when it isn't as pretty as we're trying. Matter of fact, we're wondering why a lot of our students are having so many problems once they go into the real world, because they're in this fantasy world when they're in school. That you're entitled to this, you're entitled to that. And then they go out into the real world and realize, oh, well, that's not how it works. How about we start preparing our children for what the real ugly world looks like? And at the same time, teach them to be the difference in the change. Like this is the reality of what it looks like. But you can be a part to change that. You can make a difference in this world. But when you don't prepare people for what is really going on out there, and then they're depressed. Oh my gosh, we're depressed. We're suicidal because we didn't think that when we got out into the real world, oh, wait, they don't have tampons in every bathroom in the real world. No. And what's the reality of that really happening beyond school? Oh, they don't feed you everywhere. No. there were so many things that they don't do, and it's like, oh wait, but guess what would be helpful so that you're able to feed yourself? The ability to read. That would be real helpful.
Just like the fact that, why did we take out cursive writing? I mean, our Constitution was written in cursive. That should be the default method of our language. That should be like an ancient thing that no. The one thing we can't do is, because if we take a whole generation of children don't know how to write in cursive. A whole generation can't read the Constitution.
See, and that's the thing, like, as far as like the Bible wasn't written originally, I mean, in English. And so I don't know how much I fall behind, cursive going away as a whole, especially with technology and typing. I do think it's important for us to be able to understand. And like I'm grateful, my son, they did teach cursive a little bit, not full on writing and stuff, but he can read cursive. It's definitely not necessarily easy for him, but that's stuff that can be translated. So the idea of a language or something like that going away, I'm not necessarily opposed to, but what I would want is that the credibility of what that original document had said is translated properly, because we even deal with that with the Bible. Like there's so many different versions, and I've never had a chance to, dive in enough, but I know, like, there's certain words that have, we've given it a blanket meaning. Like I don't even think the word sin, I don't think the word sin is actually in the Bible. It's like this definition that we have so that we can understand, but there's certain words that mean different things or different levels. Like even love, like there's agape love, there's like several layers of love, and yeah, I love a cheeseburger and I love my husband. It's like they're not the same, but we've lost.
They could be.
We've lost in translation. We really have. I think we've lost some in the intention of things in translation. And so that's where I'm concerned that, the Constitution, that it was written in cursive, is that, and that we're going away from that. Well, we're going away from stick shifts. We're going away from a lot of things. There's a lot of things, but as long as we have the preservation of what the original intent of that document was, and that it's translated properly, I'm not as hung up on, my son not having the ability to read or write cursive.
Right. Well, I was just saying that they're just taking everything away. That's all.
They are.
It's back in the day when we were growing up, I would say right before our age, maybe 3 or 4 class years before us, was the last years of students that still had trade school in high school. I know that I still had it kind of ish. There was still auto shop, wood shop, but very basic economics, but not really. We had sewing. We had all those things that would make you self-sufficient in the world, and they just took them away. It was like, no, this is useless. You need to learn how to read, write, and know how to determine what the difference is between genders. No,
right.
You need to know how to read, write, add, subtract, multiply, divide, read, and basic skills, hand skills. It's so funny that our youth don't even know how to change a tire, and you should be able to look at it, and it should be a no-brainer. But
right. No, you're right. I mean, and even giving back change. Like, I know I've confused many a person at a fast food restaurant or something if I've, given I want a 5 back. And so, it comes to, I don't know, whatever it comes to, and I give them more, and they're like, you gave me too much money. And it's like, yeah, because, I wanted this denomination back and change. That kind of stuff, it's all going away. And we have to be careful, because it's like even the levels of math, like exactly how far advanced do you really need to get? How much geometry, how much calculus do I use in my everyday life? Like, we really need, what does a child need to be successful? They don't seem to teach. I mean, of course, checkbooks are going away, but like balancing your checkbook or anything like that, they weren't teaching that in school. You know, the idea of being able to pay your bills and pay them on time, and interest, and you know, all of the things that go into part of life. Why are we not teaching those things? You know, it seems like we've gotten to the point where there's some basics that we teach, and then we start going, you know, advancing the levels of how we teach them. But how much of it is true? What is the bare minimum, or not in a bare minimum, but like what are the basics that we need? And then what are the other things? Like, I think you're right, cooking. Like, everyone should be able to make themselves some basic meals. And that's not something that we're teaching our kids in school. And so I don't know, maybe it is the changeover of the dynamic of the family, but families have changed. We have so many broken families now,
That's
that a
normal.
lot of, yeah.
That's normal.
And but then you wonder why we have so many broken people. We have so many broken families. We have so many broken people. And yet it's just like, you think like the solution to this is it's just like, well, we need our rights and this, that, and the other thing. And it's like, well, your rights are starting and your choices are impacting future generations. And at what point do we need to start looking at that and educating each other, you know, the impact of, like, you talk about, you know, it's like sex in school, like how much should we be going into that in school and how much is too far? But at the same time, you need to be educating people, you know, abortion isn't necessarily the go-to solution when you have sex and you get pregnant. Sometimes you end up having that child, and then when you have that child, you need to raise that child. And are you capable of raising that child? You know, I was someone who had a child at 17. I was a single mom, and I was able to provide for her. I worked, but it was hard, and she had a very difficult life. And as far as what played into that, how much of it was, you know, her upbringing versus, you know, who she was as an individual, that's a crapshoot, because there's people that are brought up in the same family, and you have one that becomes a NASA scientist and one who becomes the drug addict, but it was the same two families, or, you know, I mean, the same family. And so that idea of nature versus nurture, it's hard. But if we aren't giving people the full scope of consequences of your actions, and understanding that, hey, you bring a life into this world, are you ready to deal with that? There, I don't know. That's where we need to start having players at the table to have these discussions, and stop avoiding it and shove it in the closet. There's so many skeletons and cobwebs in the closet that nobody wants to talk about. Like, we have got to get them out, and let's have a discussion with, you know, varying sides of, you know, I don't want any sex taught in school. Well, I think some sex should be taught in school. I mean, there needs to be a balance, and where can you agree?
Yes. It shouldn't be so far left or so far right. But they it just, for me, the talking about sex in school has gotten to the point where it's gotten too descriptive, and not leaving it up to the parents. If you want to make a difference, because at the end of the day, the only thing that we should be concerned about, because a boy wanting to be with another boy or a girl wanting to be with another girl isn't going to create another life. It's not possible.
Right.
So the things that will make a difference and hurt their future is having a kid before you're out of school. So maybe once you become a 9th grader, or once you get into high school, maybe a semester or a quarter or something, you should be given, because we have the technology now, you should be given a baby, an electronic baby, and say, well, here's part of your grade. Take care of this kid. Well, what do I do? We'll see. And run the numbers and see. There's no way to teach you. You need to learn, and let's see if you can handle it. And the ones that will step up and get the good grades are the ones that, you know, are probably not going to have a kid because they know like, nah, I did that all through high school. Fuck that. I want to enjoy my life. But the fact that we don't burden them with that and grade them on it, because the ones that absolutely fail, those are the ones that we need to worry about, because those are the ones that are probably going to have a kid because they don't want to be responsible about shit. And those are the ones, at least we can weed them out a little bit and know, oh, we can keep our eyes on that one. Hey, no kissing in the hallway because we know what's going to happen with you. Something, quit spending our money on, hey, look, I talked to all my friends about this Menstrual Dignity Act that you guys are talking about with
that's really,
tampons in boys' bathrooms.
So just a side note on that is the second part of the Dr. Phil episode. So the first part aired on 9/16. I do not know when that part's going to air, but I actually spoke about 3 times in that one. But they do air a clip on the Menstrual Dignity Act, which they did have a meeting this morning at 7, but I didn't get a chance to log in until 7:24, and it was already off air, regarding whether they were going to try to make some of the changes through the petition that I had done, which the changes that I actually recommended were the original bill, the way the original bill had gone out, until somebody else got their hands on it and decided that it needed to be all inclusive and include males. And above and beyond. And so everybody wants to, there's a group of people that are freaked out. So there was 244 comments that went with that petition. I think about 40 of them were in favor of keeping them in boys' bathrooms. The rest were not. And so, when we think about, were the people's voices heard, they claimed that they went out to community members and whatnot and had this discussion before they went forward with this. But I question, who exactly did they talk to? Because I think that we would have gotten to a compromise where this, maybe it wasn't just 2. So it was at least 2 bathrooms, and the female bathrooms was how the original bill was written. I was more on the side, at least 2 bathrooms at the school's discretion to include female and gender neutral, like any kind of family kind of bathroom. But my change for what I had requested didn't mean that any district that felt that they needed to put them in all the bathrooms couldn't. I wasn't removing a district's ability to be able to put them in more bathrooms. I was just not making a requirement for those districts that don't feel, knowing their community, that don't feel that that's necessary. And isn't a wise use of money when we are failing in so many other areas. So I'm going to just say this flat out. People can sit up there and say whatever they want about my justification as to why I think it's a misuse of funds to put tampons in boys' bathrooms, because I had made a statement that boys don't menstruate, because biological boys do not. I do understand that there are people that are transgender, that are actually one sex, that are personally making a choice to identify as a different sex. That is the difference.
Here's the problem with that. If they haven't made the transition over,
right,
why are you in the boys' bathroom?
Right.
Okay? Because it leaves too much room for error for a girl or a guy to claim transgender just so that they can be in the other bathroom to do whatever.
We are risking, right. We are risking our children's well-being, potentially harming them, in order to accommodate, because that's the thing. Like, to me, this would be totally different if you were somebody who actually completely transitioned. I 100% think you should be in the bathroom that identifies with the biological parts that you have on your person. So if you have completely gone through the transition, yes, why wouldn't you go into that bathroom? But if you have not completely transitioned and you have other parts that could interfere with the parts of the other sex, then maybe you should. Why do we think it's okay to put our children in that dynamic? For the ones that are personally identifying that way versus the ones that are going to misuse it. So you're willing to risk our children for those that will misuse it to accommodate those who have not completed the transition.
Right. Nope.
How is that?
And you can't even have it until you're older. Case in point, the person that you were talking about who did the whole process at an early age, what, at 16, and then regretted it.
She started Chloe Cole out of California. I think she opened up to her parents at 12, and then they took her to, this preferred psychologist that they all decided that this is what was best for the child. And then by 15, she had her breasts removed. And then at 16, she decided, no, she wanted to be a girl. And to me, that is so, that's so sad. That we had and so whose fault is that? Who's responsible for harming her? Is it the parents? Is it the psychologist? If we have schools that are accommodating this, who is responsible for influencing someone where is that choice between influence and personal choice? We're supposed to be responsible for our own decisions, but at what point is the influence around us stronger, or I don't know, it's just we have an inability to make those decisions at such a young age.
Right. Well, I don't know. I just think right now the fact that we are just wasting money all over the place in the school system when it's so much easier for if there's a person that's transitioning. I know in some schools there's more sexual orientation differences from school to school. People who identify differently will be more at one school than others, but it's still overall is still going to be less than 1% of the total school population. So why make such a drastic change for a school when it's only a very small population of the children that are going to be in that school that need those services? Wouldn't it make more sense if you needed to put tampons in bathrooms and there was somebody who was transitional that wanted to be in if it was a girl that wanted to be in a boy's bathroom, then you might have to make a pit stop at the nurse's office to pick up a tampon if you forgot it at home. Right. But why is our tax dollars having to do? I understand that, you have poor kids out there, but, I know some women that over time, you figure out ways to make it work.
Creative.
Yes, you get creative. So, and we do furnish plenty of those creative measures,
Yeah.
So there's plenty of
toilet tissue.
Yeah,
bundled up toilet tissue is a great, and that should be in the bathroom. You run into that too.
So for us to spend $5.5 million, I think on other programs would be more appropriate than putting tampons. I mean, okay, maybe $1 million. I even go $1 million. Here, spend $1 million, give them to the nurse, and for every person that forgot theirs at home, yeah, we'll give it to you. Here's the first one. Here's the second one. The third time, hey, maybe we'll reach out to the parents and say, hey, your daughter has been coming to the school and she's been coming to this office quite a bit with that. Is there maybe something we can do to help you? Maybe not shun them or embarrass them, but say, hey, if you're doing bad, you don't have to say if you're doing bad, is there something we can do? Hey, is there, maybe we can allot a program to maybe help.
Yeah. No, there's ways to do it.
And then especially to do it all the way down to K through
kindergarten.
6.
Yeah.
There's no
K2.
I don't know.
There's no reason.
Yes, I don't know a first grader or a second grader that's having menstrual issues right now. I don't know a single one ever.
No, and they can't read very well either. So the
yeah,
idea of putting these products in there where they can't even read. But that's our time for today.
yes, 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 yes. Everybody out there, let me tell you, if you have a particular position or a stand that you have for your family, make it, take it. Because if you don't, somebody else will take a stand and take your stand away from you, and you will have their stand, and it will be what you're going to have to do. So the reason why Sensible Chery is here is to bring awareness and just let you know things are happening. And if you don't want to, help out, speak up, protect, uh, influence, make phone calls, move out the way. Somebody else will. Don't assume and take that position away from somebody else. Sensible Chery, I thank you every day, especially the fact that you share your personal story about your grandchild. I pray that we eventually get to a place in this world where common sense and sensible and sensibility will be the ruling factor of this world. But right now, it's agenda. And he who has the most money writes their agenda and creates their legacy. So just remember, if you want to keep your legacy, speak up. That lovely lady right there is Sensible Chery. I'm AG the Dad. This is Shit Talking with Sensible Chery. Stay tuned next week, 9:00 Mondays, for another episode of Shit Talking Sundays, Shit Talking with Sensible Chery. Till then, be blessed. Speak up for our kids, because if you don't, nobody else will, and they'll just get lost in the system. So everybody be blessed. Peace. Pay it forward.
Sunday morning drama is calling up my mama. Drama.